The fluorescent lights of Northwood High hummed, a dull, persistent buzz that always seemed to amplify the chaos of the morning rush. For 16-year-old Kai, the sound was usually just background noise, a familiar rhythm to the symphony of lockers clanging, sneakers squeaking on polished linoleum, and the excited chatter of hundreds of teenagers. Today, however, that hum felt like a high-pitched whine, drilling into his skull, each vibration a tiny hammer blow against his already frayed nerves. A metallic tang, like old pennies, coated his tongue, a taste he now associated with dread. Kai, a young black man of average height, with a lean athletic build honed by years on the neighborhood basketball courts, usually moved through these crowded hallways with a quiet confidence. His close-cropped curls framed a face that, before, held an easy smile and eyes that sparkled with thoughtful curiosity. But this morning, his shoulders were hunched, a subtle curve in his posture that spoke volumes of the weight he carried. His eyes, once so expressive, now held a shadowed caution, a deep-seated pain that seemed to pull at the corners, though a persistent glint of intelligence and stubborn determination still flickered within their depths. He clutched the straps of his worn backpack, the rough canvas digging into his palms, a small anchor in a world that felt like it was spinning out of control. He was heading to his first class, English Lit, a sanctuary where words offered escape. But even the promise of a quiet hour couldn't quell the churning in his gut. Every glance, every whispered word felt like a direct hit. He could feel the cold blue glow of phone screens, like tiny predatory eyes tracking his movements. The air, usually thick with the scent of cheap perfume and stale cafeteria food, now carried a faint, acrid odor he recognized as fear, his own. Then, a familiar voice, loud and grating, sliced through the hallway din, cutting through Kai's fragile composure like a razor. "Look who it is! The internet sensation!" Ethan Miller, 16 years old, a head taller and significantly broader than Kai, with perfectly styled blonde hair that always seemed to catch the light just right. His clear blue eyes, often glinting with malice or boredom, were fixed on Kai, a cruel smirk twisting his conventionally handsome face. Dressed in expensive, pristine brand-name clothes, Ethan exuded an aura of unearned superiority. His posture always erect, shoulders back, as if daring anyone to challenge his dominion. Morally, Ethan was a void, driven purely by self-interest and finding pleasure in the humiliation of others. His actions, often laced with casual racism, stemmed from a distorted belief in his own supremacy, leaving him devoid of remorse for his cruelty. Psychologically, he was a budding narcissist, thriving on control and intimidation, his popularity a shield for a deep-seated insecurity he projected onto others. Ethan's friends, a small entourage of equally imposing athletes, chuckled, their laughter a low, guttural rumble that echoed in the crowded space. They were his enablers, their moral compasses flexible, bending to the whims of popularity and power. They weren't as malicious as Ethan, but their passivity and complicity made them just as dangerous. "Still famous, huh, Kai?" Ethan sneered, his voice dripping with mock concern. "Thought you'd be over it by now." A wave of heat rushed through Kai's body, a flush of shame creeping up his neck. He tried to quicken his pace, to melt into the stream of students, but the hallway seemed to narrow, the air growing heavy, suffocating. He could hear the soft clicks of phone cameras, the low murmur of new whispers spreading like wildfire. The memory of the video, raw and agonizing, flashed behind his eyes. Ethan, holding his phone, recording Kai tripping over a loose shoelace, spilling his lunch tray all over himself in the crowded cafeteria. The sound of Ethan's cackling laughter, shrill and derisive, still haunted his sleep. The video, titled Northwood's Clumsy King, had gone viral within hours, transforming a moment of adolescent clumsiness into a public spectacle of humiliation. It had been shared, retweeted, and commented on by thousands, each view a fresh stab to Kai's dignity. The malicious lies and embarrassing images, now permanently etched online, had long-term consequences on his reputation and well-being. Suddenly, a hand clamped down on his shoulder, firm but gentle. Kai flinched, his heart hammering against his ribs. He turned to see Liam, his best friend, standing beside him, his presence a solid anchor in the swirling chaos. Liam, also 16, was a bit shorter than Kai, with a leaner build and quick, energetic movements. His dark brown, almost black hair framed expressive eyes that peered from behind thin-rimmed glasses, brimming with empathy. He often gesticulated with his hands as he spoke, reflecting his communicative nature and passion for justice. Liam was fiercely loyal, his moral compass as strong as Kai's, always ready to defend his friends. Psychologically, he was observant, empathetic, and practical, offering both a shoulder to cry on and impulsive plans of action. His understanding of minority experiences made him a natural ally and a deep source of comfort for Kai. "Leave him alone, Miller." Liam's voice was low, a quiet warning that carried surprising weight. Ethan merely scoffed, his gaze sweeping over Liam with disdain. "Oh look, the sidekick's here. Still defending your little buddy, huh? Some things never change." Just then, a soft, melodious voice cut in, calm and clear, like a cool breeze on a hot day. "Ethan, don't you have a class to get to?" Maya. Kai's heart gave a small, involuntary flutter. Maya, also 16, moved with a natural grace, her delicate frame complemented by long, straight, jet-black hair that cascaded over her shoulders. Her intelligent, curious almond-shaped eyes often narrowed in concentration or softened into a gentle smile. Her unique style, a blend of vintage pieces and modern elements, reflected her creativity and individuality. Maya was intelligent, principled, and remarkably calm under pressure, with a strong moral compass and a quiet resilience. Psychologically, she was analytical and perceptive, offering Kai a calmer, more strategic perspective, and her emotional intelligence made her an attentive listener and insightful counselor. Her understanding of minority experiences made her a natural ally and a deep source of comfort for Kai. Ethan's smirk faltered for a fraction of a second. Maya wasn't someone he could easily dismiss. Her quiet strength often disarmed him. "Mind your business, Maya," he grumbled, his voice losing some of its earlier bravado. "It is my business when you're harassing my friends," Maya replied, her voice unwavering. She stepped closer to Kai, a subtle gesture of solidarity that spoke louder than any words. The bell shrieked then, a jarring sound that signaled the start of class. Ethan, clearly annoyed but unwilling to escalate further with Maya present, rolled his eyes and sauntered off with his crew, their laughter fading into the general din of the emptying hallway. Kai released a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. The metallic taste in his mouth intensified, but beneath it, a new sensation began to stir, a flicker of something hot and unfamiliar. It wasn't just shame anymore. It was a simmering, potent anger. He looked at Liam, whose jaw was still tight, and then at Maya, whose eyes met him with a silent understanding. In that moment, surrounded by the lingering scent of fear and the fading echoes of cruel laughter, Kai knew one thing with absolute certainty. He wouldn't let this define him. The humiliation had been public, amplified by thousands. His response would be too. The seed of the viral victory had been planted. The world outside Kai's bedroom window had blurred into an indistinguishable wash of greens and grays. Days bled into nights, marked only by the shifting light that filtered through the drawn blinds, painting stripes across his carpet. The hum of Northwood High's fluorescent lights had been replaced by the relentless, insidious buzz of his phone, vibrating with notifications he refused to check. Each tremor felt like a tiny electric shock, a reminder of the digital storm raging outside his self-imposed sanctuary. The metallic taste of dread still lingered, now accompanied by a persistent dryness in his throat, a physical manifestation of the anxiety that had taken root deep within him. He hadn't been back to school since the video. The thought of facing those hallways, those eyes, the whispers that would follow him like a shadow made his stomach clench into a hard, painful knot. Sleep offered no true escape. His nights were a fragmented reel of the incident, replaying Ethan's cackling laughter, the sickening splash of spilled food, the cold blue glow of phone screens recording his humiliation. He'd wake in a cold sweat, his heart hammering against his ribs, the phantom weight of 1,000 judging eyes pressing down on him. The air in his room, usually comforting with the faint scent of his worn basketball jersey and the clean, crisp smell of freshly laundered sheets, now felt stale, heavy with unspoken shame. He picked at the peeling paint on his windowsill, the rough texture a small grounding distraction from the churning inside. His appetite had vanished, replaced by a dull ache. His mother, her face etched with worry, would bring him plates of his favorite foods, crispy fried chicken, a warm bowl of gumbo, but the aroma, usually so inviting, now seemed to curdle in his stomach. He'd push the food around, the clinking of his fork against the ceramic plate echoing too loudly in the quiet room, before offering a mumbled excuse and retreating further into himself. The silence, once a comfort, had become a suffocating blanket, amplifying the relentless loop of self-blame and despair in his mind. He felt utterly alone, adrift in a sea of public ridicule, the permanence of the video online a constant chilling reminder that there was no escape, even within the walls of his own home. Liam was the first to break through the impenetrable wall Kai had built around himself. He'd started with texts, then calls, then showing up at Kai's door, a persistent, worried presence. One afternoon, after Kai had ignored his knocks for what felt like an eternity, Liam simply let himself in. The soft click of the door a jarring sound in the quiet house. "Dude, you can't just disappear," Liam said, his voice a mix of frustration and genuine concern. He sat on the edge of Kai's bed, the springs groaning softly under his weight. The scent of fresh air and something vaguely like cheap cologne hung to him, a stark contrast to the stale air in Kai's room. Kai just grunted, pulling his blanket higher, burying his face in the soft, familiar fabric. The warmth of the blanket was a small comfort, but it couldn't erase the cold knot of shame in his stomach. Ethan's still being a jerk, obviously, but people are talking. Not everyone thinks it's funny, Kai. A lot of people think he's a total ass. Kai remained silent, but a tiny flicker of something, curiosity maybe, stirred within him. He hadn't considered that. He'd been so consumed by his own humiliation, he hadn't thought about the wider reaction. Then Maya came. She didn't burst in like Liam, all restless energy. She arrived quietly, a soft knock on the door, and then her gentle voice asking if she could come in. When Kai finally mumbled a reluctant "yeah," she slipped into the room, bringing with her a faint, clean scent of jasmine and the quiet strength that always seemed to emanate from her. She sat on the floor beside his bed, not pushing, just being present. "It's okay not to be okay, Kai," she said, her voice a soothing balm against his raw nerves. Her almond eyes, usually so bright, were soft with understanding. "But you can't let him win by hiding." Her words, simple yet profound, pricked at something inside him. Let him win. The thought was a bitter pill. He had been letting Ethan win, retreating, allowing the bully's cruelty to dictate his life. The idea of Ethan reveling in his absence, in his perceived defeat, sent a fresh wave of anger through him, hotter and sharper than the shame. "What am I supposed to do, Maya?" Kai's voice was raspy, unused. "Go back and pretend nothing happened? Everyone saw it! Everyone!" The memory of the video, the way it had spread like wildfire, the sheer number of views and shares made his chest ache. The humiliation had been witnessed by thousands, making it even more painful. Maya picked up a stray basketball from the corner of his room, turning it slowly in her hands, her fingers tracing the worn seams. "You don't pretend. You fight back, but not on his terms." She looked at him then, her gaze steady. "You're smart, Kai. You're creative. You have a voice. He used the internet to hurt you. What if you used it to help yourself and others?" The words hung in the air, heavy with possibility. Use the internet. The very thought sent a shiver down his spine, a mix of fear and a strange nascent excitement. He had only ever seen it as a weapon against him. Could it be a shield? A sword? Over the next few days, the conversations deepened. Liam, ever the pragmatist, started brainstorming ways to get Kai back on his feet, suggesting everything from ignoring Ethan to confronting him directly. But Maya, with her quiet intensity, kept circling back to the internet. She brought her laptop over one afternoon, the cool metal of its casing a stark contrast to the warmth of Kai's blanket. The soft glow of the screen illuminated her face as she showed him articles, videos. "Look at this," she murmured, her finger tracing a headline about a student who exposed a corrupt school policy online. "Or this. This girl used TikTok to talk about mental health after she was bullied. She's got millions of followers now." Kai watched, a knot of fascination tightening in his stomach. He saw stories of people, often young, who had turned their pain into purpose, their platforms into pulpits. He saw hashtags like racism and equality, with hundreds of thousands of posts amplifying voices and challenging injustice. The idea of social justice through digital reach, of making society fairer by amplifying marginalized voices, began to take shape in his mind. "It's not about getting revenge, Kai." Maya's voice was soft, as if reading his thoughts. "Not just about making him pay. It's about making sure this doesn't happen to anyone else. It's about justice." Her words resonated with a deeper truth, shifting the bitter taste of pure retribution into something more meaningful, more enduring. Justice, unlike revenge, was logical and rational, seeking what was fair for society as a whole, not just personal satisfaction. He started small, tentatively. Late at night when the house was quiet and the only sound was the gentle hum of his laptop, he'd scroll through forums, read articles, watch more videos. He learned about the devastating psychological impacts of cyberbullying, the depression, anxiety, the feeling of powerlessness. He saw how the anonymity of the internet emboldened bullies, and how the permanence of online content could haunt victims for years. A cold dread would wash over him, but then a fierce determination would follow. He wouldn't be another statistic. He began to outline ideas, scribbling notes in a worn notebook he usually reserved for basketball plays. His pen scratched against the paper, the sound a comforting rhythm in the quiet room. He thought about the subtle ways Ethan had always asserted his dominance, the casual racist remarks that went unnoticed by teachers, the way he'd manipulate others to do his bidding. He remembered the feeling of being invisible, of his voice being unheard. One night, a particularly cruel comment from Ethan, posted on a public forum about the Clumsy King video, caught his eye. It wasn't just a jab, It was a calculated attempt to further isolate and demean him. A wave of pure, unadulterated rage surged through Kai, hot and electrifying. His hands trembled, not with fear, but with a newfound resolve. This wasn't just about him anymore. This was about every kid who'd ever been made to feel small, every voice that had been silenced. He looked at the blank screen of his laptop, then at the notes scattered around him. The idea, once a faint glimmer, now burned brightly. He wouldn't just hide. He wouldn't just get even. He would turn the very weapon used against him into a tool for change. He would use his voice, amplified by the reach of the internet, to expose the truth, not just about Ethan, but about the insidious nature of bullying and the systemic issues that allowed it to thrive. He would transform his humiliation into a platform, his pain into power. The faint, almost imperceptible hum of his laptop fan became Kai's new soundtrack, a counterpoint to the silence that had once suffocated him. His room, once a prison, was slowly transforming into a laboratory of sorts, a quiet space where ideas sparked and took root. The air, no longer stale with despair, now carried the faint, metallic scent of warm electronics and the subtle, earthy aroma of the old books he pulled from his shelf, seeking inspiration. He spent hours hunched over his desk, the cool plastic of his mouse a familiar weight in his palm, his fingers flying across the keyboard, a rhythmic tap-tap-tap that filled the quiet. His initial forays into content creation were tentative, cloaked in anonymity. He started with a new, generic YouTube channel, a name so unremarkable it would blend into the digital ether. His first videos weren't about Ethan, not directly. Instead, he focused on broader themes: the insidious nature of online bullying, the psychological toll it took on victims, the feeling of powerlessness. He spoke in a calm, measured voice, his words carefully chosen, devoid of personal anger, yet imbued with a quiet, undeniable authority. He used stock footage of faceless figures hunched over phones, abstract animations of spreading ripples, and a melancholic, almost haunting instrumental track that underscored the gravity of his message. The process was painstaking. He'd spend hours editing, meticulously cutting out every stammer, every awkward pause, until his narration flowed with a seamless, almost hypnotic rhythm. The screen's blue light cast a cool glow on his face, illuminating the furrow in his brow as he concentrated, the subtle tension in his jaw. Liam, ever the tech-savvy one, helped him navigate the labyrinthine world of video editing software, his fingers flying across the trackpad with an ease that Kai envied. "You gotta hook 'em in the first 10 seconds, man," Liam would advise, his voice a low murmur as he pointed to a timeline on the screen. "People's attention spans are like goldfish on here." The scent of Liam's cheap energy drink, sweet and artificial, would occasionally waft over, a reminder of the late nights they were pulling. Maya, meanwhile, became his chief researcher and moral compass. She'd send him articles, statistics, and stories of other young people who had turned their pain into purpose. Her texts would pop up on his phone, a soft chime that always brought a small, involuntary smile to his lips. "Did you see this one? About the girl who started a whole movement after her school ignored her bullying complaints?" Her words, even in text, carried a quiet fire, a steady encouragement that fueled Kai's resolve. She helped him refine his scripts, ensuring his message was clear, concise, and resonated with the broader themes of social justice. "It's not just about what happened to you, Kai," she'd remind him, her voice soft but firm during their late-night video calls, her face a warm pixelated image on his screen. "It's about what happens to us, to everyone who feels invisible." The first video, a general overview of cyberbullying, garnered a modest few hundred views. then a few thousand. The comment section, initially sparse, began to fill with messages of solidarity. "This is so real. Finally, someone's talking about it. I went through something similar." Each comment, each like, was a tiny jolt of validation, a warm current spreading through Kai's chest. The metallic taste of dread began to recede, replaced by the faint, sweet taste of hope. He started to feel the subtle shift in the air, a sense of purpose replacing the suffocating shame. He began to notice Ethan's reactions, or rather, the lack of thereof. Ethan, accustomed to Kai's retreat, seemed confused by his absence from school, by the lack of public meltdown. He'd occasionally see Ethan in the distance, in the grocery store, or at the local park, his usual swagger slightly diminished, a flicker of annoyance in his blue eyes. Ethan would sometimes try to catch his eye, a sneer ready on his lips, but Kai would simply look through him, his gaze steady, unyielding. The power dynamic, once so clear, was subtly shifting. The cold, hard knot of fear in Kai's stomach began to loosen, replaced by a growing sense of quiet strength. One afternoon, a particularly aggressive comment appeared on one of Kai's anonymous videos, a thinly veiled threat that echoed Ethan's usual rhetoric. It was from an anonymous account, but the phrasing, the casual cruelty, was unmistakable. Kai's hands tightened on his mouse, a surge of adrenaline rushing through him. His first instinct was to lash out, to respond with equal venom. But then he remembered Maya's words, not on his terms. He took a deep breath, the scent of dust and old paper from his room filling his lungs, grounding him. He wouldn't engage. He would simply block the account and continue his work. This small act of restraint, this conscious choice not to descend to Ethan's level, felt like a victory in itself. It was a quiet, internal triumph, a testament to the transformation taking place within him. He was no longer reacting out of pain, he was acting with purpose. The hum of his laptop fan seemed to grow louder, a steady, reassuring drone. He was building something, brick by digital brick, and with each new video, each new follower, the foundation of the viral victory grew stronger. The path ahead was still long, filled with uncertainty, but Kai felt a nascent power stirring within him, a quiet confidence that he was finally on the right track. The digital landscape, once a source of Kai's deepest shame, was now a canvas for his burgeoning influence. His anonymous channel, once a quiet corner of the internet, pulsed with a vibrant energy. The numbers climbed steadily. Hundreds of views turned into thousands, then tens of thousands. The comment sections, once a trickle, now flowed with a torrent of shared experiences, words of encouragement, and desperate pleas for advice. The soft, rhythmic click of his mouse as he scrolled through the feedback became a comforting sound, a counterpoint to the anxious thrumming in his chest. He could almost feel the collective breath of his growing audience, a warm, invisible current that affirmed his purpose. The air in his room, once heavy with his own despair, now felt charged with a quiet, determined energy. His videos, initially broad in their scope, began to subtly narrow their focus. He spoke about the specific nuances of online harassment, the way a single video could shatter a reputation, the feeling of being trapped in a digital cage. He used metaphors of shadows and echoes, of voices silenced and then reclaimed. He wove in statistics Maya had meticulously researched, facts about the alarming rise of cyberbullying in American high schools, particularly its disproportionate impact on certain groups. The cold, hard data gave his emotional narrative a backbone of undeniable truth. Ethan, meanwhile, seemed to sense a shift in the atmosphere, a subtle disturbance in his carefully constructed kingdom. He didn't know it was Kai behind the anonymous channel, but the growing online conversation about bullying, especially the kind that mirrored his own tactics, clearly irritated him. Kai would see him in the hallways, his blue eyes narrowed, scanning the faces of students,
as if searching for the source of this new, unwelcome noise. Ethan's usual swagger seemed to falter, replaced with a restless energy. He started to lash out more, his taunts sharper, his pushes in the crowded corridors a little harder. The metallic scent of fear, once Kai's own, now seemed to cling to other, more vulnerable students. One afternoon, the tension in the cafeteria, usually a cacophony of laughter and clattering trays, became thick and suffocating. Ethan and his friends had cornered a quiet freshman, a smaller kid named Alex, near the vending machines. Ethan's voice, usually a sneer, was now a low growl, punctuated by the snickers of his entourage. Alex's face was pale, his hands trembling as he clutched his books. The air crackled with unspoken threat. Kai, watching from a table across the room with Liam and Maya, felt a familiar knot of dread tighten in his stomach. But this time, it was mixed with a burning indignation. The clatter of forks against plates seemed to stop, replaced with a tense silence. Liam's hand tightened on Kai's arm. "Someone needs to do something," he muttered, his voice tight with frustration. Maya, her eyes fixed on the scene, spoke softly. "The teachers just look away. The principal will give them a warning, maybe. It won't stop." Her words, though quiet, carried the weight of countless similar incidents, of institutional apathy that allowed bullies like Ethan to thrive. The bitter taste of injustice filled Kai's mouth.
And she was right. A teacher, Miss Albright, a woman with tired eyes and a perpetually worried frown, approached the group, her voice a hesitant murmur. Ethan, with a practiced ease, offered a charming, disingenuous smile, a quick apology, and a promise to just be talking. Miss Albright, clearly relieved to avoid a confrontation, simply nodded, her gaze sweeping over Alex with a fleeting, almost apologetic glance before she moved on. The incident was dismissed, swept under the rug, leaving Alex shaken and Ethan emboldened. The silence in the cafeteria, once tense, now felt heavy with resignation. A cold, hard realization settled in Kai's chest. This wasn't just about him. It wasn't just about Ethan. It was about a system that allowed this to happen again and again. The school, meant to be a safe haven, was failing its students. His personal desire for revenge, once a burning ember, now transformed into a fierce, unwavering commitment to justice. He wasn't just fighting for himself anymore. He was fighting for Alex, for every kid who had ever felt that suffocating shame, that paralyzing fear. The hum of the fluorescent lights above seemed to mock him, a reminder of the pervasive, unaddressed issues. That night, Kai couldn't sleep. The image of Alex's terrified face, the casual dismissal from Miss Albright, the triumphant smirk on Ethan's lips, it all replayed in his mind. He walked to his window, pulling back the blinds. The moon, a sliver of silver in the dark sky, cast long, distorted shadows across his room. He felt a profound sense of responsibility, a heavy mantle settling on his shoulders. He called Maya. Her voice, soft with sleep, quickly sharpened when he explained. "We have to do more," Kai said, his voice low, urgent. "The anonymous videos are good, but they're not enough. He needs to be exposed, really exposed, not just for what he did to me, but for what he does to everyone." Maya was silent for a moment, and I could almost hear her mind working, processing the implications. "That's a big step, Kai," she said finally, her voice thoughtful. "It's not just about you anymore. It's about a movement. And it means putting yourself out there, really out there." "I know," Kai replied, his voice steady, resolute. The fear was still there, a faint tremor beneath his skin, but it was overshadowed by a powerful sense of purpose. The metallic taste of dread had vanished completely, replaced by the clean, sharp taste of determination. But what's the alternative? Let him keep doing this? Let the school keep ignoring it? Liam, when they told him the next morning, was initially hesitant. "Dude, that's risky. What if they figure out it's you? What if Ethan comes after you?" His voice was laced with genuine concern, his brow furrowed. "He already has," Kai said, his gaze firm, "and he will again. But this time, I'll be ready. We'll be ready." He looked at his friends, his eyes burning with a quiet fire. "We need proof, irrefutable proof. We need to show the world who Ethan Miller really is and what happens when people like him are allowed to get away with it." A new energy filled the room, a palpable shift from despair to strategic resolve. The hum of the laptop, the scent of old books, the quiet clicks of the keyboard, they were no longer just the sounds of Kai's solitary struggle. They were the sounds of a plan taking shape, a collective effort to turn a personal humiliation into a powerful statement for social justice. The fight was no longer just Kai's, it was their fight, and the stakes had just been raised dramatically. The path to the viral victory was about to become a direct confrontation. The air in Kai's room, once a sanctuary of quiet despair, now crackled with a different kind of energy, a focused, almost electric tension. The faint scent of warm electronics from his laptop mingled with the sharp, clean smell of freshly brewed coffee, a constant companion during their late-night sessions. The rhythmic tap-tap-tap of keyboards and the soft clicks of mice filled the space, punctuated by hushed whispers and the occasional frustrated sigh. This wasn't just Kai's fight anymore. It was a collective mission, a silent war waged from the confines of his desk. Liam, ever the digital sleuth, became a master of online reconnaissance. His fingers danced across the keyboard, navigating social media profiles, public forums, and school gossip sites. He had a knack for finding the subtle breadcrumbs Ethan and his friends left behind, a carelessly tagged photo, a deleted comment screenshotted by someone else, a fleeting mention of another bullying incident. The blue light of his screen reflected in his glasses, giving his eyes an almost predatory gleam as he unearthed digital dirt. He'd often mutter under his breath, a low growl of indignation as he found more evidence of Ethan's casual cruelty. The taste of stale energy drinks was a constant on his tongue, a testament to the hours he poured into the task. Maya, with her keen analytical mind and unwavering moral compass, meticulously organized every piece of evidence. She created a digital fortress of screenshots, video snippets, and anonymous testimonials. Her calm demeanor was a steadying force, even as the weight of the task pressed down on them. She'd pore over the details, her almond eyes narrowed in concentration, ensuring every piece of information was verifiable, every claim backed by irrefutable proof. "We can't leave any room for doubt," she'd say, her voice soft but firm, as she highlighted a particularly damning piece of evidence. "This isn't just about exposing him. It's about making sure no one can deny what he's done." The faint scent of her jasmine lotion would occasionally drift over, a calming presence amidst the digital chaos. The most challenging part was finding other victims. The fear of retaliation, the shame of having been targeted, often kept students silent. Kai remembered that paralyzing fear all too well. He and Maya crafted careful, anonymous messages reaching out to students they suspected Ethan had bullied, offering a safe, confidential space to share their stories. The silence that often followed these messages was deafening, a stark reminder of the pervasive fear Ethan commanded. But then, slowly, hesitantly, the replies began to trickle in. One message, from a girl named Chloe, detailed how Ethan had systematically spread rumors about her, ruining her reputation and isolating her from her friends. Another, from a quiet boy in their science class, described how Ethan had physically intimidated him, stealing his lunch money and mocking his stutter. Each new story was a fresh wave of anger for Kai, a confirmation that his fight was righteous. He felt the familiar knot of dread in his stomach, but this time, it was for them, for the pain they had endured in silence. The metallic taste of fear was replaced by the bitter taste of shared injustice. The ethical implications of their plan weighed heavily on Kai. He remembered the research Maya had shown him about the dangers of public exposure, the risk of desensitization, the potential for further trauma for victims if their suffering became viral content. He didn't want to become another version of Ethan, using the internet to inflict pain. His goal was justice, not just retribution. "How do we make sure this isn't just more bullying?" Kai asked one night, his voice low, the words heavy with his internal conflict. He ran a hand through his short curls, the rough texture a small comfort. Maya looked at him, her gaze steady. "That's why the evidence is key. And the message. We're not just showing what he did, we're showing why it matters. We're talking about the impact, the systemic issues. And we're not going to use his name in the video. Not directly, we'll let the evidence speak for itself and let the audience connect the dots. It's about accountability, not just public shaming." She explained how they would include content warnings and focused on translating online awareness into tangible change, not just momentary outrage. Liam, who had been listening intently, nodded. "And we'll make sure it's not just a got ya video. It's a call to action for the school, for other students, for everyone who's ever felt like they couldn't speak up." He tapped a rhythm on his keyboard, the sound a steady beat of determination. The plan for the viral victory video began to take shape. It would start with Kai's own story, told with raw honesty, but quickly pivot to the broader issue of bullying and the school's inaction. Then, the evidence, carefully edited snippets of Ethan's behavior, anonymous testimonials, screenshots of his cruel online posts. The visual would be impactful, but respectful, focusing on the actions, not just the individual. The audio would be Kai's voice, calm and authoritative, weaving the narrative together, building a case for accountability. As the final pieces of evidence fell into place, a new thread emerged, a second pinch point that sent a jolt of fear through them. Ethan, perhaps sensing the shift in the digital winds, or perhaps tipped off by a careless whisper, began to escalate his tactics. He started posting cryptic messages online, vague threats about snitches and consequences. He even confronted Liam in the hallway, his voice a low, menacing growl, asking if Kai was planning something. The air around Liam had felt cold, heavy with unspoken menace. The pressure mounted. Kai felt the familiar tightness in his chest, the dryness in his throat. This was it. They were on the verge of something big, something that could change everything. But the risk was immense. If Ethan found out, if the school intervened prematurely, if their plan backfired, the consequences could be devastating. The weight of responsibility pressed down on Kai, but beneath it, a fierce, unyielding resolve hardened his spirit. He looked at the meticulously organized files on his screen, the faces of the other victims flashing in his mind. He couldn't back down now. The time for the viral victory was almost at hand.
The air in Kai's room was thick with a silence that hummed louder than any laptop fan. It was the silence of anticipation, of a precipice. The digital clock on his desk glowed a stark, unforgiving red. 7:59 p.m. 1 minute. His fingers hovered over the mouse, a tremor running through them that had nothing to do with fear and everything to do with the immense, terrifying power he was about to unleash. The scent of stale coffee and nervous sweat hung heavy, a tangible manifestation of the collective anxiety. Liam sat beside him, his usual restless energy subdued, his eyes fixed on the screen. His hand, usually tapping a rhythm on his knee, was clenched into a tight fist. He had double-checked every link, every timestamp, every piece of evidence. The meticulousness was a shield against the gnawing uncertainty. He could feel the tension radiating off Kai, a palpable heat in the cool room. Maya stood behind them, her presence a quiet anchor. Her hands were clasped tightly in front of her, her knuckles white. She had reviewed the script countless times, ensuring every word was precise, every ethical consideration addressed. Her gaze was fixed on Kai's profile, a silent message of unwavering support. The faint scent of her jasmine lotion was a calming presence, a small comfort in the charged atmosphere. On the screen, the video thumbnail stared back at them, a stark black-and-white image of a generic school hallway, subtly distorted, with a single, blurred figure in the foreground. The title, carefully chosen, read, "The Unseen Scars, a Northwood Story." It was deliberately vague, designed to pique curiosity without revealing too much too soon. Below it, the Publish button glowed, a beacon of irreversible action. 8 p.m. Kai took a deep, shuddering breath, the air cold in his lungs. He looked at Liam, then up at Maya. Their eyes met his, full of a shared resolve. This wasn't just about him anymore. This was for Alex, for Chloe, for every silenced voice. The metallic taste of determination filled his mouth, sharp and invigorating. With a final, decisive click, Kai pressed the button. The screen flickered. A small, almost imperceptible processing message appeared, then vanished. The video was live.
For a moment, nothing happened. The silence stretched, taut, and agonizing. Then a single notification popped up, then another, and another. A cascade of chimes, a digital symphony of engagement. The numbers on the screen began to climb, slowly at first, then accelerating with dizzying speed. Views, 100, 500, 1,000, 5,000. Comments, a trickle, then a stream, then a flood. The comment section exploded, a blur of text scrolling too fast to read. Emojis of shock, anger, and solidarity flashed across the screen. The air in the room seemed to vibrate with the sheer volume of digital activity. "It's happening," Liam whispered, his voice hoarse with awe. His eyes were wide, reflecting the blue glow of the screen. Maya leaned forward, a small, triumphant smile gracing her lips. "It's viral." Across town, in his sprawling, impeccably decorated bedroom, Ethan Miller was scrolling through TikTok, bored. The soft glow of his phone illuminated his face, a mask of casual indifference. He was looking for something to mock, something to dismiss. He saw a trending video, "The Unseen Scars," pop up on his feed. Another one of those preachy bullying videos, he thought, rolling his eyes. He almost scrolled past it, but the sheer number of views, climbing rapidly, caught his attention. "Must be good for something," he mused, a flicker of curiosity. He tapped the screen. The video began with a calm, measured voice. Kai's voice, though Ethan didn't recognize it immediately, stripped of its usual youthful tremor, imbued with a newfound authority. The visuals were generic at first, blurred hallways, faceless students, a stark animation of a spreading ripple. Then the voice began to describe the insidious nature of cyberbullying,
The feeling of being trapped, the silence of victims. Ethan scoffed, about to close the app. But then, the visuals shifted. Screenshots of anonymous online posts flashed across the screen, messages filled with casual cruelty, familiar turns of phrase. Ethan's smirk faltered. He recognized the tone. Then, a grainy video snippet, clearly filmed from a distance, showed a tall, blonde figure cornering a smaller student near vending machines in a cafeteria. The audio was muffled, but the body language was unmistakable. Ethan's blood ran cold. More snippets followed, a quick cut to a screenshot of a deleted social media post, then a voice, distorted but clearly a young girl's voice, describing how he had spread rumors about her. Another distorted voice, a boy's, recounted how he had stolen his lunch money and mocked his stutter. The evidence was meticulously compiled, irrefutable. Each piece, though anonymized, pointed to one person. Ethan's face, usually so composed in its arrogance, contorted in a mixture of shock and disbelief. His jaw went slack. He saw his own actions, stripped bare, laid out for the world to see. The video didn't use his name, but it didn't have to. The context, the details, the sheer volume of corroborating evidence, it was all there. He felt a cold, sickening dread spread through his stomach, a feeling he rarely experienced. His phone, usually a source of power, now felt like a burning coal in his hand. The comment section below the video was a raging inferno. "OMG, this is Ethan Miller. I knew it. He's such a jerk. Northwood High needs to do something about this. Justice for Kai." The last comment hit him like a physical blow. Kai. It was Kai. The humiliated kid, the one he thought he'd broken. Ethan threw his phone across the room, the device clattering against the wall before falling silently onto the plush carpet. His breath came in ragged gasps. His face was flushed, not with anger, but with a raw, unfamiliar fear. His carefully constructed world, built on intimidation and unchecked privilege, was crumbling around him. The silence of his opulent room, usually a comfort, now felt like a vast, empty space, amplifying the hammering of his own heart. He was exposed, and the world was watching. Back in Kai's room, the notifications continued to pour in, a relentless stream of validation. Kai watched, a profound sense of catharsis washing over him. The weight of the past few weeks, the shame, the fear, the isolation, it all began to lift, replaced by a quiet, fierce triumph. He hadn't just gotten revenge, he had ignited a conversation. He had turned his pain into a powerful statement, a beacon for others. The hum of his laptop fan now sounded like a gentle purr, a quiet celebration of a battle won. The fight for justice, however, had only just begun. The digital storm Kai had unleashed raged for days, then weeks, slowly settling into a persistent, undeniable hum. The video, The Unseen Scars, a Northwood story, had become a phenomenon, racking up millions of views, its message echoing across social media platforms. The comment section, once a blur, now solidified into a powerful testament of shared experiences and collective outrage. The sheer volume of messages, of people finally feeling seen and heard, was overwhelming, a warm, almost tangible wave of solidarity that washed over Kai. The air in his room, once heavy with the scent of nervous sweat, now carried a faint, sweet aroma of victory, mingled with the lingering scent of his mother's celebratory cooking. The repercussions for Ethan Miller were swift and severe. The school, initially hesitant to act, found itself under an unprecedented deluge of public pressure. Parents, community leaders, and even local news outlets picked up the story, fueled by the irrefutable evidence Kai had meticulously compiled. The principal, a man with a perpetually formal posture and a professional smile that rarely reached his eyes, was forced to confront the systemic issues his administration had long ignored. Ethan was suspended indefinitely, his athletic scholarships revoked, and his carefully constructed social empire crumbled. His friends, once his loyal entourage, quickly distanced themselves, their faces pale with fear of association. The silence that now followed Ethan in the hallways was deafening, a stark contrast to the laughter that once accompanied him. The bitter taste of his own humiliation, once a constant companion for Kai, now seemed to cling to Ethan, a poetic justice. For Kai, life at Northwood High was irrevocably changed. He was no longer the humiliated kid, the target of whispers. He was the viral victory, a quiet hero, a voice for the voiceless. Students he'd never spoken to before approached him, their eyes filled with gratitude, sharing their own stories of bullying and injustice. The metallic taste of fear had vanished completely, replaced by the clean, sharp taste of newfound respect. Liam, ever by his side, reveled in the shift. His energetic movements were now channeled into helping Kai manage the burgeoning online presence, sifting through messages and brainstorming new content ideas. He'd often clap Kai on the shoulder, a firm, reassuring touch, his eyes bright with pride. "You did it, man! You really did it!" Maya, with her calm wisdom, helped Kai navigate the complexities of his new platform. She reminded him of their initial discussions about the ethical considerations of public exposure, the importance of focusing on systemic change rather than just individual retribution. "This isn't just about Ethan anymore, Kai," she'd say, her voice soft but firm as they sat side by side, the cool metal of their laptops glowing in the dim light. "It's about making sure Northwood and schools everywhere become safer places. It's about turning awareness into action." Her presence was a constant reminder of the deeper purpose behind his viral success. The faint scent of her jasmine lotion was a comforting presence, a subtle reminder of their shared journey. Kai started creating new videos, shifting his focus from exposing individual bullies to advocating for broader change. He spoke about the importance of empathy, the need for stronger anti-bullying policies, and the power of speaking up. He collaborated with other young activists online, amplifying their messages, building a network of changemakers. His voice, once trembling with fear, now resonated with a quiet authority, reaching thousands, then millions. The rhythmic tap of his fingers on the keyboard was no longer just about editing. It was about building a movement. The school, under new leadership and intense scrutiny, began to implement changes. New anti-bullying programs were introduced, teachers received training on recognizing and addressing harassment, and a confidential reporting system was established. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start, a tangible ripple effect from Kai's courageous act. The once cold, impersonal hallways of Northwood High now felt a little warmer, a little safer. One afternoon, as Kai walked through the bustling cafeteria, the familiar sounds of laughter and clattering trays filled the air. He saw Alex, the freshman Ethan had cornered, sitting with a group of friends, laughing freely. The sight brought a genuine, unburdened smile to Kai's face, a warmth spreading through his chest. The bitter taste of past humiliation was gone, replaced by the sweet taste of true victory. Kai knew his journey was far from over. The fight for justice was a marathon, not a sprint. But as he looked around, at the faces of his friends, at the subtle shifts in the atmosphere of his school, he felt a profound sense of purpose. He had taken his deepest pain, his most public humiliation, and transformed it into a powerful force for good. He had found his voice, not just for himself, but for countless others. The viral victory wasn't just a video, it was a testament to resilience, a beacon of hope, and a reminder that even in the darkest moments, one voice, amplified by courage and community, can ignite a revolution.